Episode 13, with the title Death. We're following the signs of the times. We have dealt with what Jesus is teaching in Matthew 24, in Mark 13, and Luke 17, and Luke 21, all these passages in the Gospels, in the New Testament, what Jesus says about the future. And we discovered that the same order of events can be found in the book of Revelation. And now we're dealing with these riders, ghost riders in the sky. And we have dealt with the first rider on the white horse, being the preaching of the gospel to the nations first. Then the second rider, red as blood, taking care of mass killings in an incredible way. Then the third rider, being black, pointing to hunger and black markets, and black as people get even black literally because of starvation. And now we're at the fourth seal, Revelation 6 verse 7 and 8. When the Lamb opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth living creature say, "Come." I looked, and there before me was a pale horse. Its rider was named Death, and Hades was following close behind him. They were given power over a fourth of the earth to kill by sword, famine, and plague, and by the wild beasts of the earth. So, pale. It is in the Greek chloros. It's a kind of palish, yellow, greenish type of color. So that's this rider, and it has to do with death. But in this way, that this death happens by the living creatures of the earth. Of course, we know about wild beasts like lions and leopards and other and cats and who kill mice, and so a lot of death is caused by these wild beasts. But when you look at the Greek here, you can also understand that this refers to the tiniest of wild beasts, being viruses and bacteria. And so they cause death by making people ill. You have the Black Plague, you have all kinds of contagious diseases. And although modern science and medical science is able to cope with a lot of these diseases, we're almost at a kind of turning point that these bacteria and viruses get resistant against penicillin and other modern chemical stuffs that have been discovered to fight and kill these germs and so forth. So in this case, it's by the tiniest of the living creatures that death is taking place. And so death and Hades is following. Jesus mentions it also in his speeches that contagious diseases will spread. And when you look at the modern types of it, also sexual transferable diseases by these kind of germs, although sometimes we find ways of, but it's like here is getting an explosion of these diseases in the end times as a sign of the times. Death and Hades. In older translations of the Bible, you read the translation for death often, or Hades, like hell. But there are basically two words in the Bible, Gehenna, being the place of torment, of eternal death, of pain, of what is hell, and death in the sense of Hades, like a kind of intermediate stage after death, which also has two departments. Jesus gives a glimpse when he speaks about the rich man and the poor Lazarus, which is not a parable, by the way. Jesus spoke a lot of parables, examples, to explain certain things, but in this case he gives us, as it were, a glimpse what the reality will be after death. Because the rich man opens his eyes in the pain, and poor Lazarus, when he dies, opens his eyes to be in the bosom of Abraham. It's an expression to be in glory and in paradise or whatever. So you have a kind of paradise part, like Jesus says to the murderer on the cross, today you will be with me in paradise, whereas the rich man goes into the other department and he can see Lazarus. The Bible doesn't say that Lazarus can see him in his pain. Lazarus is looking towards God and the Lamb, but the rich man can see him. And so he says, please, please send Lazarus back to earth to warn my brothers, because it's terrible where I am right now. So even in the Hades, in the death department, you have a nice part and a bad part, but it's still not hell as it will be after the final judgment. That's Gehenna. But now a lot of dead are coming into Hades by these massive killings and massive dying by diseases, by war, by anything. So it is suddenly a great influx of dying people in that area. And so knowing this about the reality of afterlife, this way or that way, the only way to be absolutely sure that you will open your eyes, even after a fatal disease or in war or whatever, that you will open your eyes in the paradise part of the life that comes after this life. The only way to be sure is surrender yourself to Jesus, who has the power to send his angels to guide you over that last border and be received in the beautiful surroundings of paradise, waiting for the great day of the resurrection.